Please.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Please remain standing for a moment, please. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the beautiful weather for our community Easter egg hunt on Saturday, sandwiched conveniently between two spring rainy days. We thank you for the inspiration of Garrett Ford, who we recognize here tonight, and we ask, Lord, that you give us the strength to make every day a positive one and to meet any challenge we may face with a smile, with grit and determination, and to keep in mind always, thy will be done. We ask for all this tonight, Lord, in your holy name. Amen.
Amen.
Hey, Kathy, roll, please.
Carter. Here. Walter.
Here.
Powell.
Here.
Barstow.
Here.
Picken.
Here.
Lee.
Here. Okay, we have a quorum present, just missing one tonight. Okay. First thing on the agenda is citizens' comments, and we're going to start out tonight with something I love to do. We have a proclamation for, and you don't get to say this very often, but we have a Olympic gold medalist here in Pataskala. So I've got a proclamation here. And it's a long one. Because this guy's done a whole bunch. Come on up here, sir. Why don't you bring your family too if you want? Come on, don't be shy. If you want to take pictures too. Okay. It is one of the responsibilities and privileges of the mayor of the city of Pataskala, Ohio, to recognize people and events of outstanding worthiness. Garrett Ford lives in Pataskala with his family, works at Rural King and Heath, works out at the old school gym, volunteers and enjoys music and spending time with his family and dog. He began powerlifting 4 years ago. Only 4 years ago? At CrossFit Newark during an adaptive powerlifting class, and is often affectionately known as the Hulk. And after dominating the competition in Ohio for several years, Garrett won 3 gold medals at the National Special Olympic Games in Seattle in July, which qualified him for the Special Olympic World Games. And while at the Special Olympics World Games in, how do you pronounce that, Abu Dhabi, in March, he earned 4 gold medals and was held to the same rules and standards as the traditional Olympic Games. He dominated the competition, outlifting athletes in 2 divisions outside his own. He competed in the 83 kilogram weight class in the junior division with stats of squats, winning weight of 336 pounds, bench press 275 pounds, deadlift 505.5 pounds, and best overall, more than 1,116 pounds. While at the games, Garrett was able to meet athletes and make friends from all over the world. He also met members of the USA powerlifting team, and you want to pronounce that for me. What's that guy's name? Hafthor Julius Bjornsson? Bjornsson?
Yep.
From Game of Thrones. He participated in the game's opening ceremony, appearing in a skit with WWE star Finn Balor, and even met Karen Pence, the vice president's wife, after he lost his phone, which she ended up finding, right?
Yes.
He was honored by Arnold Schwarzenegger at the recent Arnold Classic, has also appeared in a documentary, has been profiled by the Newark Advocate, the Columbus Dispatch, and several TV stations, was interviewed by ESPN at the games, and has participated in commercials to promote the Licking County Board of DD, and which is Developmental Disabilities, and the Polar Plunge. And he is looking forward to attending the Special Olympics Ohio regional and state meets so he can see his friends that he's made from around the state. And he's also training with hopes to qualify to compete with the USA powerlifting team. So therefore, I, Michael W. Compton, Mayor of the City of Pataskala, Ohio, do hereby wish to say to Garrett Ford, congratulations on all your achievements.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, and you don't have to stay.
Okay.
All right, thank you. You're welcome. See you all later. Thank you.
Well, that was the fun part.
Okay, moving on. Citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir. I'll need your name and address. Yes, sir. Step up to the podium. I need your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes, sir.
Sure. Tim Barrett, 575 Richmond Drive, Pasco, Ohio. Resident in the Jefferson Meadow condominium group. And I'm here to speak in support of the first reading of the ordinance 2019-4337. We have lived, my wife and I, in the Jefferson Meadow condominium area for just over 6 years now. Except for a few brief months in Kentucky, we have been residents of this community since May of 1977. It's been almost 20 years in Beechwood Trails. Speak in favor of this ordinance. It is currently zoned multi-family residential. I lived somewhere 2001, 2002 at the request of Mid-Ohio Development. It was zoned that way because the plan was to extend the Jefferson Meadow community across a wooded area west and then bordering Watkins Road. Economic downturn 2008, they decided against that. They did finish developing on our side. They put 4 more quads of 4 about a year and a half ago. There is a developer who's very interested in the property, contingent upon approval of a variance by the Board of Zoning Appeals, and then also going to the Planning Commission. They want to build, I believe, in the neighborhood of 42 to 44 apartments. When you look at the requirements in terms of zoning, the ordinance before you this evening meets each one of the criteria with no exceptions. When it was first read before the Zoning and Planning Commission, none of the other departments of the village had any comment. And I guess the biggest thing in keeping with the neighborhood, if this is approved, then the neighborhood basically will remain as it is. It'll be low density, residential, single family. If the other goes through, then a large wooded area, the vast majority of it will be taken out. That developer's plans, he does not own the land yet. It's contingent upon things going through before he buys it from Mid-Ohio. Certainly they're going to do some things with trees, but these will be smaller trees, take quite a while to mature. And again, our thought is what is before you would be keeping with the neighborhood. There's been a lot of comments, planning and zoning, Board of Zoning Appeals in terms of roads, the infrastructure there, in terms of schools and the impact on schools. The superintendent, Southwest Looking, has spoken to the Planning and Zoning Commission twice regarding that. And I think there is a road study that is supposed to be underway before a final decision is made there. So again, we're very much in support of this ordinance and wanted to make our desires known to you. Thank you,
sir. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir. Name and address, and you have 5 minutes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. My name is Robert Sexton. I live at 5447 Watkins Road. My property is directly adjoining the property that the previous speaker just referenced. I also am here to speak in favor of the same ordinance and ask that this council take all steps that it possibly can to preserve the nature of the neighborhood where this apartment complex would be proposed to go in. It just simply doesn't fit the the character of the neighborhood, which is one of the aspects of a variance that is before the appeals board, and just all the way around, we're asking for council to take these steps to protect against multiple items, including bus transportation issues, trash pickup issues, increases in traffic, and then of course the great big wooded area that the previous speaker talked about, which is a buffer between three different areas, three different neighborhoods at this point that was lost to this situation. So I won't belabor it by repeating things that Mr. Barrett spoke on. I'll just simply say that we would ask the council to approve this ordinance.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name is Gary Sunderman. Need my address.
Yes, please.
652 Monticello Court, Jefferson Meadows, Conduit. As a resident of Pataskala and Ward 3, and specifically Jefferson Meadow Condos, I'm in support of Ordinance 2019-4337, which is a request to change the zoning classification of a parcel on Watkins Road from medium low density RM to from multifamily to medium low density RA. Primary reason for supporting a change of zoning classification is because the proposed development is appears to be very inconsistent with the development that has occurred in the surrounding and adjacent properties. Surrounding communities, Beechwood Trails, Barrington Ridge, Jefferson Meadow Condos, adjacent neighboring residents in the Watkins Road, Megan Dog Kennel, plus the Southwest Licking School Superintendent have all spoken out against this type of development, which, as was mentioned previously, a 42-unit, two-story townhouse apartment complex. And this has all been discussed at previous zoning and zoning appeals meetings. And those remarks, I'm sure, are all a matter of record. Primary objections have been traffic concerns close to the intersection of Broad Street and Watkins Road, school bus pickup and drop-off of students, which would have to be done on Watkins Road near that busy intersection. Question about the parking, adequate parking within the project, and the overall design, which, when you look at the neighborhood, it just doesn't really fit. A sore thumb, it sticks out like a sore thumb. The owner of the property, Mid-Ohio Development, who has owned that property officially since 2003, has originally planned to build condos on the property and has, except for this last remaining portion of the original tract. For whatever reason, Mid-Ohio has decided not to develop more condos, but instead has a developer who is proposing a very unwelcome apartment complex, which is unlike anything else in the immediate area. A rezoning to R87 classification would provide for a much more reasonable development of the property by having minimal traffic impact, minimal school bus pickup and drop-off concerns, and a much more consistent type of growth among the existing communities. Your favorable support of this ordinance will be very much appreciated, and I thank you all for your service to the Pataskala community.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else wish to speak? I did want to, yes, sir, go ahead. While he's coming up, Kip, I know you're here tonight to answer any questions. Was there anything you wanted to say tonight before we started, or you're just going to be here for questions during that ordinance?
No, just during your ordinance. I'm here at your disposal.
Okay, very good. Name and address, please.
Good evening. Drew Clark, 174 Wintergreen Loop, Pataskala, in Beechwood Trails. I'm also here to urge you to support the ordinance of 2019-4337. I'm sure you are aware of a lot of the arguments that were made at the Board of Appeals, at the Planning Commission, concerning traffic and the nature of the neighborhood, school bus drop in, drop off, a lot of the comments that the previous speaker already made. I'm also in support of it and urge you to support the change as well. I think the zoning made sense when it was annexed and was originally going to be a few condos for Mid-Ohio. Without holding Mid-Ohio to doing that planning, you now have a very odd U-shaped piece of Pataskala surrounding Harrison Township homes of Mr. Sexton and 3 others that kind of envelop them. The lot split has shown that half of that is unusable, and it really has created kind of a mess. And I think by itself, it doesn't make sense. My understanding is that the draft of the new comprehensive plan also does not support this being multifamily, even though the current one does because of the Mid-Ohio's plan. So I also urge you to please support rezoning this. I think you're going to see, if apartments are built in a place that they don't quite fit, property values reducing, congestion increasing on Watkins, and an already interesting intersection where we have business land that's not developed yet either, and putting in the apartments in this way without considering access to those businesses, I think would also pose a problem as well. So I thank you for the time and appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak tonight? Yes, sir.
Eric Fauner, 667 Forward Pass. I also live in the Beechwood Trails subdivision, and like all the speakers before me have stated, it's touched pretty much every office in this building. Everybody knows about it. It's become a major topic for the surrounding community there. I think we have a lot to think about on how we deal with that traffic. That is a major intersection that is going to be continuing to have increasing flow, not only from the businesses that may or may not approach there, but I think we need to think about that. So I'm for the rezoning to the R87. I think that helps bring character back to that side of the of Pataskala right there, as well as keeps those businesses open. If you put apartment complexes in there currently, Megan's Kennels is right there, and everybody knows what dogs like to do, is bark. There's going to be a lot of traffic in and out of there with 42 apartments. That's at least 82 cars coming in and out of there. And, there's a lot of people that depend on that business. She's been in business for a long time, and I'd hate to see one new development cause business being suffered and or put out of business. That is her life dream. So, as well as many of the other things, we have horse farms down in the Beechwood Trails area with a lot of traffic coming for this horse shows and whatnot. So, all right, I appreciate you guys. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else? Yes, sir. Or yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. You were hiding.
Oh, you on Facebook, you should know me.
You were hiding behind the post.
Nancy Arledge, my husband and I live at the end of Middle Ground Road. We are Harrison Township, but we have considered ourselves Pataskala for 28 years. I grew up in Summit Station, which is now Pataskala. I'm concerned mainly about everything that everybody else has said, but also apartment dwellers are not permanent people. They come and go. They don't have ownership pride. They're just sitting there ready to go to the next one, usually. I'm not gonna say it's always the case. I'm afraid of what might move in near us and what might happen to the people that are behind there. We're probably far enough down the road that it doesn't really matter as much as it does to those people that have been in Mid-Ohio's original development. And there's no place for children to be safe in the corner of Watkins and Broad Street. There's no place to be. There wasn't much in their planning for anything for these kids. There is a nice Beechwood Trails Park, but there are no sidewalks to get there, and it's pretty far down the road. So it would be much nicer for all of us in that area to be low density, have a couple houses put in on that odd shaped lot, and put apartments somewhere else where there's better access and ability for people to enjoy them like we enjoy our homes. Thank you.
Can I have your address just for the record? please?
459 Middle Ground Road, Southwest.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak tonight? All right, seeing none. Introduction, discussion, and approval of consent agenda matters.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Carter? Yes. Walter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hayes? Excuse me. Picken?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
Okay, consent agenda passes. On to reports. We had just perfect weather, as I said in the prayer, for the Easter egg hunt, and everything went very smoothly. I hope that you're pleased, Mr. Crawford. Parking, everything went very, very well. It's a fine, well-oiled machine now. So, but it's now was that your first one?
That was my first rodeo of the Easter egg hunt.
Yeah, pretty wild. When the weather's perfect, that's what you get. So
It was beautiful.
yeah, it was. So thank you for your help with that. I don't have that much else, but I am going to ask tonight once, and I know BJ will cover it in his report, but 2019-4336 has the items that are in this, and I know we don't do this very often. We don't waive readings. But all of these things are pretty understandable, and common sense stuff, safe travels, pool chemicals, paying our IT guy at the police station, and money for a retention pond. So I know it'll garner some discussion, and that's fine. If it happens, it happens. But we've been trying to save a bunch of money with the police station, and that's why we went with our own IT guy. And Jamie, tell us what, I know we let a PO lapse, is that correct?
The budget lapse at the end of the year.
The budget lapse, and what we should have done was immediately on January 3rd, say, hey, can we have another PO for the remaining? Okay, explain it to
Back
me.
in 2018, we should have issued a PO.
Before the end of the year, we should have issued a PO for the remaining. The money's there, it's always been there, but we lost it when at the end of the year. So it lapsed. So it's not taking any money from anywhere else, but we would like to get this gentleman paid. So I'm sure that'll garner some discussion. So that's all I have. Mr. Barstow.
I don't have anything this evening, thank you, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Zetz.
I have nothing, thank you, Mayor.
You're good. Mr. King.
Thank you, Mayor. Several items here. You already mentioned Kip is in attendance in case there's any questions, in case there are any questions about ordinance 2019-4338 as it relates to some changes and amendments we want to make to the mayor's court fee schedule. Some are going up, some are going down, some are being added. There's not significant changes, but Kip was nice enough to attend tonight in case there were any questions in regards to that. The next thing I want to say, with it being tax day today, and we've talked about it before, but just the work that Janice does with helping people with their income taxes. At about 3:30 today, I checked, and she had over 20 people either stopping in or calling that she was helping. And, you know, to do Rita income taxes for 20 people throughout a day is probably not a pleasant thing to do. But she does it every time, nice as can be, helps everybody, whether they have a situation. You know, it worries me someday we're gonna lose Janice and that service. So again, we may wanna consider when Janice does retire, having tax days with Janice and allowing people to come in and get used. But she does a great job, and I know the phone was ringing off the hook, Jess was getting calls about it. She just handled each one just the same, nice as could be, and helped everybody out, so kudos to her.
Real quick on that, since January, she helped over 150 people with their taxes. So,
Just a quick thing on taxes, so I did mine, paid my city taxes on Saturday. But, yeah. But
Thank you.
in trying to upload my city W-2 using TurboTax, your Paycor is who issues it, it wouldn't do it. I had to take a few minutes and type it all in myself, but just FYI,
I didn't have any problem with it, so I'll talk to you.
maybe, I tried it two
Yeah.
times, but it wouldn't, maybe it was just TurboTax, it wouldn't accept it, so, I don't know. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks. We have 2 executive sessions this evening. We will go upstairs for both of them. The first one will have 3 gentlemen over here joining us in. Main Street update. Our electrician and the gentleman from AEP met out there last week. I'm waiting to hear back from the gentleman from AEP, but they are eager to get started fairly soon on that project. They said they have a lot to do. AEP wants to get it all energized, and then the electrician will just come past and hook everybody up. So we'll continue to keep council updated on that project. The theater air conditioning, we talked to the contractor and designer last week, gave a brief update at the Buildings and Grounds Committee meeting. They were having some challenges of getting ductwork from the back upstairs. They've determined they could probably go on the exterior of the building, the back of the building. They're also looking into any requirements they may have once they start cutting into the ceiling, if there's asbestos, what that could mean. So again, I will continue to keep council updated on that. I know Tommy's gonna touch on it during his Buildings and Grounds report, but we continue to gather quotes and everything for the old town hall renovations. Things are coming along well. Chris has been over there. We were over there today with Stephanie as well, picking out some stuff, coming up with some different ideas, nothing major that we'll be doing over there. Do anticipate working with these gentlemen here in a couple weeks if need be, getting a Saturday, having staff, some employees come in, authorizing overtime to get cleaned out as much as we can. Chris is gonna be identifying furniture that they'll reuse either at that location or at their plant, so some that will be reused. The mayor mentioned I will report on 2019-4336, but I will reserve that for the discussion period. Happy to answer any questions.
Anything for BJ? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Nicholson?
I really have nothing else on my report. I will comment on the legislative report. There was some typo issues on Oak Meadows. It should have indicated that it was the increase is due to the Pat Haven reroute, not alternates. The legislation is correct. It was the legislative report that was incorrect.
Anything for Jamie? Thank you, sir. Chris?
Thank you, Mayor. This evening has a resolution to authorize payment to Ventura Brothers for the Mill Street Waterline project. As we got into that and broke ground, as so often happens in Old Town, we came across some issues that we didn't know on. So their bid originally was a $9,000 quote, and by the time the work all got done, it came out at $12,800. We had to install a new feeder line and a hydrant because the hydrant in the area of Mill Street and Jefferson was not on the 8-inch line as our map showed, but it was on the 6-inch line that we abandoned. So we had to do some extra work there that added to the cost. In keeping with the tradition of typos in the legislative reports, I put on there that the funds were for Ventura Brothers providing a pump. That is not what they did. They provided work. The legislation is clean. It was just a legislative report that I had to typo in. The Mill Street project is done with the exception of removing that hydrant that is now dry and restoring the yards in the area. We were able to get the project done in 1 week, half the time that we anticipated. Weather held out just long enough to get paving done, so went as smooth as a project like that can go. This week we did the land application for the biosolids program. AgriSludge came out and hauled all of our product for the last 6 months to the field in less than 2 days. Last year that took us 3 weeks to do on our own. They just had bigger trucks and they have 2 of them. So They were able to do it a lot quicker. They also did the application process. In about 2 days, they had to take Friday off because of rain. They stayed late Friday night into Saturday morning. So all of the product for the last 6 months has been hauled to the field, applied to the field, and the farmer's already tilled it into the soil. So it was a huge time saver. It was a little bit of money, but it was money well spent to bridge the gap of us trying to get our feet back under us while we relearn the biosolids program. The staffing wise, we whittled 79 applications down to 6 for the building clerk position. All the interviews are scheduled for this week. Got 3 on Thursday, 3 on Friday. Hopefully we come out with a winner in that 6, and we can, I know I've said this several times before, but be back to full staff once again. Let's see. The annual CCR report is done. It's posted on the website. We made note of that on the city's Facebook page. We'll do the same thing again for the next couple months. It's also going out a link to the website. Will be going out in the monthly bills for the next 2 cycles. CCR is just a breakdown of the water quality over the last year, all the lab results, contaminants found, whether or not they were above the EPA limits. No contaminants were found above the EPA limits. The water was safe all year, but it gives you a breakdown of that. And there's some helpful information in that as well as far as limiting leaks, just some little things that customers could be interested in. The other thing I wanted to mention was the Southeastern chapter of the OWEA had a section meeting on April 11th last week. It involved 4 wastewater plant tours. We went to Buckeye Lake, Southwest Lake in Pataskla, and one of Fairfield County's wastewater plants on Schneeman Road. It's not something that Pataskla has been a part of before. Just wanted to say that the guys did a great job. They got the plant looking amazing. They went through some practice runs. We had 64 people in attendance from local communities, EPA reps. One guy was all the way from Toledo down to check out our plants. So it was a pretty big group. We split them into 2 30-man groups, and I led one group with Rich, our lead wastewater operator. I leaned on him for the technical information. Our plant superintendent, Ryan, led the other group, and I received a lot of compliments on the job they did. You know, the guys were a little nervous, and I was too, about talking in front of everybody, but they stepped up and did a really good job. They did all that in the midst of their daily operations, and that is the day that the weather cooperated and we had to load agri-sludge for the land application process. So it was a full day, and they did a great job. So I just wanted to get that out there. And outside of that, I don't have anything unless there's any questions.
I'm glad to see that you're branching out and working with other departments. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That 6-inch line that went to that hydrant, did we still have water in it? Was it still a live hydrant?
No, that is it's fed from the 6-inch line that we were abandoning at Mill Street.
Okay.
The map showed it being on the 8-inch, it was on the 6-inch, 10 feet away from it. So when we abandoned that line, turned the hydrant back on, no water, so we had to adjust.
We never had a dead hydrant.
No, there's a brand new hydrant sitting right next to it right now. We just have to pull the old one out.
Thank you. Anything for Chris? All right, thank you, sir. Alan?
Thank you, Mayor. I'll start out with a few project updates. We had a couple bid openings last week. The first one was for the paving program for this year. Our engineer's estimate on that was $705,000. Shelley Company came in at $660,000. So that was very good. We'll be looking for authorization for a contract with that for the next council meeting. Hopefully start construction in June. We also opened the Pataskla Safe Travel Plan bid. Engineer's estimate on that was $130,000, and MP Dory came in at $124,000. So we'll be looking for authorization for that as well at the next council meeting, as well as hoping to start construction in June. The Oak Meadow project will open April 30th. The Taylor Road Trail, just got word today that they'll be starting paving on that again for the surface course mid to late next week, now that the asphalt plants are opening up. And that should take about 45 days to complete that and get it all restored. Next, I've got a resolution on for tonight, 2019-033. That is for replacement of 6 culverts on Headley's Mill Road. That is ahead of this year's paving project to replace those culverts that are all at the end of their useful life. That's a coordinated effort with Spinco and city personnel to keep that cheaper and to do it quickly. The last thing I've got is I do have a few things on the supplemental. I have copies of the spreadsheet that I created with the last year's carryover surplus, as well as the supplemental needs for this year if that is needed. And then one other thing I'd add to that is we got our final report back from ODOT on the Columbia Road Bridge. That project has been done for a while, but we finally got word from ODOT. We saved an additional $65,000 on that project, which will go back to the 201 and the 205 permissive funds. Aside from that, happy to answer any questions.
How many culverts replaced?
6.
Get 7 in your resolution.
Yeah, you're correct, there are 7.
Okay.
I was wrong.
Just wanna make sure.
Sorry about
Found
that.
another one, didn't you? Not hard to do around here.
No, it's not.
Anything for Alan tonight? Yes.
Yeah, I guess on that 033,
Yes.
in the legislative report, though, you talked about, although it didn't rise to the level of a bid. What is that level? I've forgotten.
Should be 50,000.
Well, 50,000 is our competitive bid.
So it didn't rise to the 50, not, okay.
Correct.
I couldn't remember, and I don't,
And they had been low bidder on previous projects, which we did for a couple, and here in the near future project.
Any other questions for, yes, sir?
And you mentioned on there that that was part of the budget. I did not go to my budget book to find out exactly what that what was the original budget
We
amount?
budgeted 30,000.
So we were coming in at 20. You think it'd be under 20 with the 7, or 20, was it 22?
It's 20.
Or 20,
So we'll
okay.
be, and part of that is we'll use some street material fund, or for materials for the pipe. We're buying the pipe and they're doing the installation.
Okay, so what do you think
it'll
the
still
total?
be under the 30,000.
Under 30, okay, perfect, thanks.
All right, let the orange barrel season commence.
Yes.
All right, Scott.
Thank you, Mayor. A couple things to highlight in my report. The next Comprehensive Plan Steering Committee meeting will be held on Monday, April 29th, from 7 to 9 p.m. in council chambers. Also, I wanted to point out that for ordinance 2019-4334, that's the Heron Manor rezoning, we had our public hearing and first reading on April 1st. At that time, there was a question in terms of had the school district Southwest Licking responded. I did receive a letter from the superintendent on April 3rd expressing his concerns with the proposed rezoning. The full text of his concerns is in the letter attached to my report. And finally, on May 6th, we'll have a public hearing and first reading for ordinance 2019-4335. That's the amendment for the unsafe structures section of the code. Aside from that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anything for Scott? Thanks, sir. Lanier?
Thank you, Mayor. Give a couple project updates. The holding tank construction at Foundation Park, that will begin on Wednesday. They're hoping to have that job complete by Friday, and the restoration will also start. So there's no soccer this weekend, so that will not be an issue. Car park bathroom updates, that'll start also on Thursday. So we're gonna do some repainting, and also paint the shelters and the roofs. The roof of the shingles have been replaced as of Saturday. So those projects have been complete. We have a resolution 2019-031 for Liberty Park project to be able to put that out to bid. I'm hoping that we can sign that proposal and get it out by the end of the month, and most likely start construction late to mid-June. We also have an ordinance 2019-4336 with the pool, purchasing chemicals for the pool as we go through the season. This past Friday, myself and also my 2 maintenance guys, they went to the pool, helped with the opening, pumping out the pool, and with Ann, and that was a successful day. And this Wednesday, we'll go back and get the pool ready. That way we can open up here in a month. Last week, I had the opportunity to attend a grant management course. That was a 2-day course, 8 hours each day, to be able to properly manage grants that we would write as a new revenue stream for the Parks Department. So I'm hoping to take full advantage of that in the future. And to go back to the Liberty Park project, at our last Parks Board meeting, the Parks Advisory Board recommended, or I guess wanted me to come to council. In 2019, we have a CIP project for Citizens Park in the amount of $10,000 to extend or create a parking lot. After receiving a quote from Spinco, it was $45,000 in material alone. So I'm asking to asking to reappropriate those funds for tree clearing at Liberty Park prior to commencing the construction for Liberty Park project for tree clearing. So I'm coming to you guys and hopefully to use that money in a different manner. And besides that, I have no other updates.
Spenco, the same guy that's gonna do the culverts?
Yeah.
Couldn't squeeze that in, Alan?
Not $45,000.
Here's our 7th culvert. Any questions for Lanier tonight? Yes.
The clearing at Liberty, is that in conjunction with the plan you've already received from OHM? Are they identifying what trees you want to take out?
Tree King will identify them, not the, OHM didn't do that for us.
Okay.
That's
So it
what
doesn't
you're
have anything to do with the actual improvements that are planned there, is that correct?
No, no.
Okay.
That's
And then
not part of that grant at
Okay.
all.
That's what I was trying to ask, if that could be done under that cannot be done under the grant at that point.
No, it's not
It
part
will
of the
not
grant funding for that
Okay.
that was identified when
All right.
we submitted.
And then the scope, your $10,000 for clearing, do you have any idea, are you clearing 2-3 acres? What do you think?
It's
you're clearing?
about we're not totally tearing them down. There's a lot of, what do you call them, widow makers in there, a lot of dead trees, we want to clear it out to the point to where, we still have shade in a way, but the floor or the ground itself is kind of open so we can place 5 or 6 nature play elements inside of that acre.
Okay, so I'll get with you, because I think that there's probably some other contractors that I know of that specialize in that type of stuff.
Okay.
Maybe worth looking into.
Okay.
All right, great, thanks.
Anything else for Lanier? Thank you, sir. Chief Brooks?
Thank you, Mayor. I actually have nothing tonight, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. How's that new seat feeling over there in the new station?
Pretty darn good.
Good. Good. Any issues?
Just, working out some new stuff. There's, noticed a couple boards on one of the fences that has come loose, but nothing major.
We're still keeping a list for punch,
Yes,
final punch?
absolutely.
Okay. Very good. Anything for Bruce tonight? Thank you, sir. Committee chair reports.
You wanna go first?
Good.
All right. We've actually had 2 buildings and grounds meetings since last council meeting. So a week ago?
Week ago today.
Week ago today, Tim, Suzanne, BJ, Kathy, also Brian Elder and Diane Grove from the Chamber met at Old Town Hall to kind of just refresh ourselves on that project as it starts to take off here now that the police have met. BJ, thank you for doing this. To save a bunch of time tonight, I had BJ put together this for all of council that basically just shows you the phase 1, where it stands now, with some rough numbers. Again, this is kind of a working, it's not 100%, this is what's happening, but at least gives council an idea where things stand on that. I think Tim would agree that having the chamber in there is going to be a really cool thing for the city. They're really excited about it, and we hope to have them in there by the end of July, at the latest.
Their office will be the first part of the project that is completed.
Right. So anyway, if there's any questions on this, email me, BJ, whatever. Yeah,
If you don't mind. I'll wait.
Yeah. Anyway, that was pretty much the purpose of that meeting, was to go through that project. Tonight, we had a real quick meeting to go over Lanier's Parks and Rec. We're gonna call it a community project policy. We made a recommendation to bring that to council. He's gonna tweak it a little bit, and we'll see that at some point. So, if there's any questions, Andy?
Yeah, on the chamber, is that are they paying, is there any kind of lease, or are they paying any kind of rent on that?
Yeah, what you'll be seeing before they move in is legislation authorizing to enter into the lease, so they will be paying a monthly rent to us.
Great. And we're talking, I think, a 5-year,
Yeah.
a long term.
They keep, looking around for different office spaces, and they've probably, they used to be in this building. They've been in several others in the downtown, they just keep moving. trying to find them a permanent home. I think it's a good reuse of an office in there. Plus, they'll have access to the conference room for their monthly board meetings as well.
Are they giving us any directions for their build-to-suit? I mean, obviously, this is build-to-suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they're giving us direction on what they want.
Yeah.
There's really not anything that, other than paint colors and carpet, everything that's there works.
It works.
Yeah.
Okay.
There's
The
no-
only thing is, when you come into the main building, you're in the lobby, you've got the payment window here, you've got the doors that's here, and there's a door that's drywalled over on that wall. We're gonna open it back up so they can have access directly from the lobby into
police,
there.
Right.
Yeah, so they don't have to go back through it every
And also now that the police aren't there and secured, when there's an event at Sterling Theater, they'll have a bathroom access, which is, so, yep. Did you have something else?
Just one other quick thing, just ADA compliance. Is there any issue with the chamber utilizing that space without having handicap accessibility?
If, not that they have brought up
Okay.
specifically, we do have, in the back, the ramp.
There's
you
a
get in,
ramp of the lift.
And there's the lift too, if need be.
So they can have access to
Yeah,
that?
yeah, they'd have access to any of that as well.
Any other questions? Tim, did I miss anything?
Nope, good job.
Go out.
Mr. Chicken?
The utility committee's committee meeting met tonight. We talked about several different things. I can hit on them briefly. I will skip the ones that Chris already gave council an update on. So it may sound short, but he's briefed you on a couple of things that we talked about. The first thing we talked about was Scenic View Estates. That's the estates that are behind, Barrington Ridge?
Yeah.
Hazelwood.
Hazelwood,
Yeah.
sorry, I'm to the left of, council might remember that there was a question about, that developer, having to put in some significant, pathways to reach our sewer system. And what we, were able to do was talk to the district to see if that, they could divide the bottom piece of that property with gravity flows very easily into our system. The other part sits immediately adjacent to Southwest Licking Sewer and Water sewer systems. As a result of that, and talking to Southwest Licking Sewer and Water, they had a couple of changes they would want made. There are some lift stations at the dead end streets of
Faultless and Middle Ground.
Faultless and Middle Ground that now are grinder lift stations, and the goal would be to possibly eliminate those and upgrade a pump station that sits down in the gully.
It's in Barrington Ridge.
By Barrington Ridge, where that dip is underneath the electrical lines. They seemed to be open to that, and Chris has started the conversations with the developer to see if that's something that will work. Chris brought up some good things about changes to the city's water code. When we changed the water regulations, it has to do with fee structure, but we changed it from 25 to 35. That information didn't get changed throughout the entire code. And he brought up the idea of the $35 $35 fees being updated throughout the code. As an addition to that, we talked about, if council remembers, adding an addendum to the shut-off rule for apartments, I think was the last time that we talked about it. That's gonna be added too, and all that would be brought back to council. I feel I'm missing one thing there from my notes. Is it?
The other thing is changing the wording from quarterly billing cycle to just billing cycle, which
Yeah.
we no longer do.
That's just-
And the other thing is the fine for tampering with.
Illegally tapping in or messing with the
Exercising
city's water, adding some teeth to that, because really there isn't. So the council should look for that in there as well. I believe it's $1,000 if somebody gets in and messes with our tapping. So that will all come before council. The most significant part of the conversation for tonight had to do with the ongoing rate structure discussion. This is something that has spanned 2 different utility committees. It was started last year. Some of you that were on the utility committee last year might remember us beginning that process. I think that the utility committee now is at a point where we've really discussed a lot of options, and kudos to the administration because they've done a good job in giving us ultimately about 8 different possible ways to go. We saw our job as kind of narrowing that down, and council should expect some in-depth review of what on our pieces of paper were options 6, 7, and 8 for council to all take a look at and be prepared to come and discuss. It has to do with, it goes out to 2024. And obviously there's probably, I'm sure we'll all have a lot of discussion about it. It involves a much lower increase with one of the options, 2 of the options, with offsetting years of no increase at all. So, just saying. I would look for that, and I think our goal ultimately is to get it done so that education, if council passes it, education by the administration to the public for what's coming can begin to start to take place. Of course, it will not take place until next year anyway. So, and that's it.
Any other committee chair reports? All right, moving on to unfinished business ordinance 2019-4334 for a second reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Powell,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Walther. Kathy, when you're ready, second reading.
Ordinance 2019-4334, this is the second reading, an ordinance to rezone property located on West Broad Street Southwest, parcel number 064-307-692-00.000, totaling 4.85 plus or minus acres in the city of Pataskla from the GB General Business GB zoning classification to the R10 High Density Residential R10 zoning classification.
Discussion?
Yeah, I would just like some clarification on how, from my mediator, Scott, how this has changed since our last meeting.
Certainly, and Scott and Brian, please chime in, and it's changed several times through discussions we have. As council knows, I sent an email to everybody last week, I believe, just explaining a process. I know there was some discussion about amending the lot size for these 20 lots that are subject to this rezoning. Working through, and I sent out and said, hey, you know, the charter says this. We had Scott and I had a discussion with Brian about interpretation, looking at it different ways. And then today we had another discussion that with changing those lot sizes is not necessarily connected, I guess, for lack of a better way, to the rezoning in and of itself. It is connected to the approved preliminary development plan the Planning and Zoning Commission considered and ultimately approved. In order to, and guys chime in if I get any of this wrong, hopefully I'm doing it justice. In order to amend those lot sizes, that preliminary development plan would need to be amended and not necessarily the zoning, you know, separate that out from the rezoning portion of it. So if they want to amend those, it would have to go back to Planning and Zoning Commission to amend that preliminary development plan. And then Planning and Zoning Commission, if they so choose, could make a condition of that approval contingent upon the rezoning being approved here at council. Please add anything that I may have missed, Scott or Brian.
That's my understanding as well.
Correct. Okay, Andy?
So BJ, just for clarification, so you're saying the development plan is not part of the zoning? Is that what you're saying?
They could come in and rezone a piece of property and not have a development plan, preliminary development plan subject, part of that. We've had those before where somebody's come in and the question has been, what can go there? And we're like, there's a whole slew of things. My understanding and talking to Scott confirming this is that Planning Commission considered a rezoning application and also a preliminary plan application, preliminary development plan application on the same night.
And were those 2 separate votes?
Both were separate applications. The approval of the preliminary plan was contingent upon the proposed rezoning being successful. So should the rezoning be disapproved, then the preliminary plan would no longer be approved because that was condition of approval.
Ms. Hicken?
I appreciate the clarification. It's still something I'm gonna have to wrap my head around. It's gonna, I mean, it's, mostly because I think I have been fairly adamant, that's the right word, about talking about, wanting, being involved with rezoning in the city to move away from high-density, stuff and it's high-density rezonings. And this, part of this is zoned appropriately, although it's high density. Part of this was moving towards a medium, what I would consider more medium. I realize R20 is not necessarily by definition, but now not being able to consider that is going to have to be something to wrap my head around.
What, increasing the lot sizes?
Yes.
It's
Or are you telling me that is okay now?
If, there are a couple options here. One is for council to proceed with the ordinance as it is currently written with the, essentially with the condition of the preliminary development plan with the 50-foot lots moving forward.
Okay.
Council could table it. If the applicant is interested in increasing those lot sizes, council could table the rezoning. They could go back to Planning and Zoning Commission and seek the amendment to the preliminary development plan. Third option is that if the rezoning is denied, as we know, the back portion of this does have residential zoning in place, and that could go forward with the underlying zoning, and it would be considered by Planning and Zoning Commission.
Commissioner, I have a question. So on option, I understand options 1 and options 2. Option 3, I just have a question. So my understanding is that based on the current zoning for the back portion, the portion that's not being sought to be rezoned, that, and then this is the part I'm curious about, that the developer could actually put in more houses than is currently proposed.
That is correct. As the application currently...
And would not have to come to council for approval for that because of the way it's zoned.
That is correct.
It
And
would
as
just-
this currently sits here at a second reading, I believe it's a total of 151 lots. That includes the 20 that is subject to this. If they came in and developed in the back part just with the underlying zoning, I believe it's about 169 lots.
Mr. Walter? So, let me make sure I understand. So if, I'm gonna say option 2, as you've explained it, where this is tabled and sent back to planning and zoning, if it came back with the increased lot size, and we picked it up from there, we don't have to have 4, we would be in a situation where we would not have to have 4 readings. If we wait, it comes back from them amended, then we have to get a clean, I'm asking for, it's a technicality. Since we didn't change the ordinance, does it have to be, I'm thinking about the way the charter language is written.
If it's tabled tonight, it does not have to sit for a fourth reading. If it's tabled at a third reading, it would have to sit for a fourth when it came back. My understanding, and Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, the rezoning request would not change because it would still be from GB to R10. The preliminary plan would change though, which does not make its way to council. So my understanding, and we've got our law director here, if it went back to Planning and Zoning Commission, they made, and hypothetically, they approve a plan that has 75-foot wide lots, and they make that plan contingent on the approval of this rezoning. My feeling is we could pick up this same rezoning because it's still GB to R10 and go from there.
Can I ask it a different way?
Did I not?
No, that's perfectly fine, I understand that, and I understand the whole differential between the preliminary plan and this. They could have brought the rezoning forward without a preliminary plan,
Yes.
correct? Could they not, and the preliminary plan approval is contingent on the rezoning?
Yes. That was, so, you
So
know,
I get
if they came forward right now with just and said, hey, we just wanna do the rezoning,
That's what I'm asking.
the preliminary plan would, if it was approved, the preliminary plan as it is presented right now, the current one, would be approved as part of that approval. Because
But they could they not also withdraw their preliminary plan? And just ask for the zoning to be approved? I'm thinking of it.
yeah, I don't know.
I don't know that it could be withdrawn, as planning commission's already acted on it, so that's already.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that one.
Because they've already acted upon the preliminary plan itself, but then that approval is contingent upon the successful rezoning.
That's what I guess I'm getting at, since it is contingent. It's not approved per se, it's contingent.
Contingent.
I'm just asking, you know, if that's fine. That clarifies it, thank you.
Scott, is it correct that if it were denied, regardless of how many lots they can put there or not, it'll be contingent upon still putting that road in?
Yeah, the staff would still like to see that connection to Broad Street be installed. It would be up to the planning commission to require that, but staff would say it's an important part of the plan to alleviate some of the traffic concerns that we had from the beginning.
BJ? Well, and, you know, where we sit here tonight talking about council tabling this, I just don't know if going back to planning commission and widening those lots is something that the applicant is interested in doing. I believe they may be, but.
Why would we, I guess my 2 cents is, why would we not give them that opportunity? I mean, if they seem to have said that they might be available to that, and if they are, would we not want to give them that opportunity?
Certainly would.
Now, the hard part of, you know, everybody up here, I'm sure, has different views about the project in general. And so we're all gonna have to come to grips with whether each individual amongst us thinks that's okay, or that they feel comfortable with moving forward with it. I'd hate to go, yeah, we'll go back and work on it, come back here and everybody go, no. You know, that's some cricket. But by the same token, I'd like to know if they're interested in that.
I'm gonna weigh in on Mr. Barstow's comment. I think that if the lot sizes are wider, that's obviously something that has been expressed as a good thing here at council. But the downside would be the more dense development that could be back there per the zoning that is existing. So I'm gonna weigh in that I would be more inclined to approve a wider lot size if that did come back to us with this proposal versus the zoning that could bring in 169 units, period.
Right, and I mean, again, as with Mr. Walters' comment, Mr. Pickett's comment, I mean, I think this is if this is indeed what the developer is proposing, to widen the lots, I think that's a very positive step, and I think that that's a sign that, at least for this developer, they're listening to what council and residents have to say. So I have no problem with giving them the opportunity to work with planning and zoning to come up with a new development plan or whatever they call it down there, that would widen the lot size. And if planning and zoning doesn't approve it, or the developer decides that they don't wanna do that, or whatever, then we'll still have the ordinance here. And I don't think we need to, I think if we let it, if we table it and let it sit on second, and we're not gonna be amending it, because we're not going to be changing the rezoning, the rezoning is the big picture, what is that thing called now?
Preliminary development plan?
Whatever it's called, that thing. That's the micro part of it, so we don't get into that. So I think we consider tabling it, let the developer go back to planning and zoning, see what they can work out, and then come back to us. Because if we say no on a third reading, then they say, and rightly so. Fine, we offered, they rejected, and so now you're gonna get 169 houses?
I believe that's the number.
So-
Mr. Powell, do you have something to add?
No, just I agree with Mr. Barstow that I think so. It sounds like the best option to allow the developer to expand the lot sizes, to table this, let them go back, amend their plan, tied to this rezoning, and then move forward from there. Yes, sir.
I just didn't know if it was council's pleasure to have Ms. Klima weigh in on this, so you had her hand up, I didn't know. You'd like to
No, I think that'd be great.
I think it would help the
It's
discussion.
fantastic.
Yep, Connie's right here, might as well, come on up.
Sure.
Name and address, please.
Sure, Connie Klima, P.O. Box 991, Pataskala.
As you probably saw in the email I provided to all council members, the only thing subject to you, of course, is the rezoning portion of this. And my clients discussed it and were willing to widen the lots on the rezoned portion of the property, which eliminates, I think, 4 lots in total over the whole development. Makes the 75-foot, 10,000 square foot lots in accordance with the R10 general standards without cluster on the rezoned portion. It was our hopes, of course, that you could just amend the existing rezoning application without going back, because our zoning application is separate and just requests for the rezoning, as does the recommendation suggest just for the rezoning. I am willing, I'm not going to argue that point, we're willing to hopefully either have you amend the existing rezoning application with the condition that the lots be 75 feet wide, or if we have to, go back to the planning commission. That's acceptable. Thank you.
Thank you.
Actually, I got a question. Can I-
Sure. She's here. Say it. Now's the time to do it. Go ahead.
Ms. Graham, as you say right there, widening the lot size, is it currently zoned as R7?
No, it's currently zoned as GB. We're
Okay.
asking for a rezoning to R10, which is what the other lots will be also. R10 is the already existing zoning on the remaining portion of the property.
When the original plan that we saw that had the smaller lots
Mhm.
was R10 as well, correct?
Yes.
So they are expanding those lots by removing the houses. They're making either the frontage or some piece of the lots bigger, are they not? Or are
No.
they just doing away with 4 homes and they're not?
What we're saying is that we would keep the preliminary plan as it is on the existing R10 property, and we would increase the sizes of the lots on the portion of the property that we're having rezoned.
Okay.
Yes.
I just wanna make sure that we are talking about
But we're
making-
not exceeding the density, as Mr. Barstow said, we're still under the density that were permitted in the R10 district. We're requesting 151 on the total site, and now we will be asking if you would amend, or however you wanna do that, on the rezoning portion, we will have approximately 4 to 5 houses less.
And that space goes where?
And in the
In the rezoned,
in the
on
rezoned
the
portion.
properties, essentially on the properties along the road.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's what I wanna make sure.
Any other questions for Connie? Okay,
And I
thanks.
just, that's, again, that's the widening lots, that's just gonna be on the GB to R10 rezone.
Yes.
Okay, you said what, 4 to 5 houses?
Actually, it goes from 20 lots to 16, I believe,
4
approximately.
lots, okay, thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
Yeah, I move that we table ordinance 2019-433.
Got a motion to table?
Second.
Seconded by Mr. Powell. Roll, please.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Pickens,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
4334 is tabled. On a new business, ordinance 2019-4336 for first reading.
So moved.
Second by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy, when you're ready.
Ordinance 2019-4336, this is the first reading, an ordinance to make supplemental appropriations for current expenses and other expenditures during the fiscal year ending December 31st, 2019.
Discussion?
Mr. Mayor?
Yes.
I'm gonna channel my inner Mike Fox, which comes out every once in a while. I mean, I don't like, I know there's talk about, fast tracking this. I'm really not comfortable with that. I understand that the reason we want to have a vendor, we want to pay, and as someone who, is a vendor, not for the city, but for counties, I understand the lengthy Rip Van Winkle process of getting paid. But what I would suggest to the administrations in the future, if we have an ordinance that has this Christmas tree like this, where we have a bunch of different things going on, and we want to fast track something, make that as a separate ordinance. Just put that out as, on its own, we can fast track that, because some of these other things are fairly, they're significant amounts of money, and they involve significant things, and I don't feel comfortable in fast tracking. I'm not sure how I'm gonna vote, but might vote in favor of it, but that's what would be my suggestion. I mean, I don't mind if we have, 4 ordinances, that involve different things that are all for supplemental. I know that kind of creates havoc for the finance department, but we could have done this. I would have no problem if the vendor pay portion was 43.36, and then everything else was 43, whatever. So that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, the only reason I'd mention it, because it looked like all common sense issues, the safe travels, the pool chemicals, the retention pond, and of course paying the IT guy. So that's the only reason I brought that forward, but I appreciate your input.
I would never vote in favor of something, Mr. Mayor, that wasn't common sense. So the fact that it's common, I just want to respectfully disagree. The fact that it's common sense is zero bearing on whether we should waive readings, in my view.
Okay, poor choice of words. Thank you, sir. Andy?
I'm gonna agree with a lot of that. I do have a couple questions here I think are gonna get a little bit more complicated. I'm having a hard time following the math on a couple of these things, which I tend to get involved in there. The Pataskala Safe Travel Plan, for instance, I can't make heads or tails out of your budget is $65,000. The approximate cost of now $140, and we have 40 budgeted for this year. 65 was for last year, so that's 105. We're saying the projected cost is 140. We heard that it's bid out at 124, and you guys want an increase of 100,000. So those numbers don't add up. It's actually an add to the project of $35,000 over the 2 budgeted amounts. Does that make sense? Go ahead.
So let me answer that. So last year we had budgeted 65,000 for phase 1.
Right, and that
Bids
lapsed.
came in at 90,000.
Right.
So we redid phase 1 and redid some things to accommodate those changes and make it more in line with what the actual numbers were going to be. This year we had 40,000. So what we were looking for was roughly 130,000. But we had 40,000 budgeted and went ahead and went up to 100,000 because that was more or less decided before we got the bids in. So we didn't know what the bids were going to come in at.
Fair enough.
There's
Fair enough.
2 other factors that are going to come into math here a little bit as well. Maybe getting there. So for Oak Meadow Drive, that one is also, of course, we have 75 on that one. The current engineer's estimate is 750. There's a little bit of contingency built in that one because we haven't got that bid in yet. And finally, the ramp at 650, and then the alternates add up to about 250, and there's 50,000 of contingency in there as well. If you add up all those contingencies, that's taking into account for what we don't know what Oak Meadow is going to be, and that way we don't have to ask for any additional supplementals. If they're good, the money just goes back to the bottom line. If they're higher, then we've got a little extra money built in here for any contingency.
Okay, and that's fine. I don't know if we can maybe make that just a little bit clearer the next time. I did spend a bunch of time on this trying to understand why we were, saying it was 750 and then asking for 75 additional when we had 700 in it. So I'm just trying to figure all that stuff out because it does add up pretty quickly.
Did you get a copy? I think I sent you a copy of the spreadsheet, and I got another copy here that has.
I did not get that.
Okay.
I don't believe
I
I
sent it
saw
out
it.
maybe a month ago to all the council.
Well,
I'll definitely give
We'll
you
get
another copy of it.
yeah,
Print it out.
that would be-
just make sure this will get back out.
Okay, thank you.
Other discussion?
Mayor, I just have a question for Mr. Zatz on this. Is there any way we can separate out the payment to the police department IT? I believe that's in here somewhere.
First one.
It is.
First bullet point.
Mr. Zatz, is there any way procedurally we can separate that out, get that voted out, if that's council's pleasure, and then deal with the rest of this?
I don't believe so. I think what you originally talked about, we could have made them separate ordinances.
Okay.
So, sorry, IT guy.
All right. Any other discussion?
I would say this, if the administration comes back on May, whatever, our next meeting is, with an ordinance that pays the IT guy, I will vote to fast track that.
And we would have to then amend this ordinance, correct?
Correct.
Which is fine, because
Yeah, well,
it'll be a second reading.
it'll be a second reading,
Which is
so,
fine.
yeah, yes,
I was-
exactly.
I was gonna
Exactly.
suggest that
Yeah,
also.
just, hint, so I'll.
Exactly.
We can certainly do that and pull this out to proceed accordingly, and we'll just have the 2 supplementals.
That's fine,
Okay.
All right, thank you. Any more discussion on this one? Okay, very good. Ordinance 2019-4337 for a first reading.
Mr. Mayor, point of order, just for the record, I'm going to leave the dais and excuse myself from voting or discussion on this ordinance. Thank you.
Okay. Still need a motion to read?
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Lee and seconded by Mr. Powell. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2019-4337, this is the first reading. An ordinance requesting an amendment/change to the zoning classification of the property located at 0 Watkins Road Southwest, parcel number 442-000.047, totaling 6.88 plus or minus acres in the city of Pataskla from the multifamily residential RM zoning classification to the medium low density residential R87 zoning classification.
Discussion? Yes.
Sure. Yeah, I've got a couple different questions. Scott, we had talked about this after the planning and zoning. And I didn't know if you had a chance to look up anything from the annexation that happened when this actually came to Pataskla. Did you get a chance to look at that at all and kind of refresh what the?
I'm in the process of looking our record keeping.
I know.
Something to be desired. So we're in the process of looking through the files to see what we can find on this.
And can you, if you don't mind, can you repeat that?
It was, when I talked to Scott, I'd asked him to look up when this was annexed in and it was zoned at that time, what the discussions were at that point, whether there were any obligations at that point, either by the city or by the developer.
So you'll keep looking for us?
Yes.
Very good. First reading, so we got some time ahead.
And my understanding after looking at this is the apartments is not a conditional use. This is a use that is permitted in this zoning, correct?
That's correct.
The current zoning.
Correct.
Okay. And in your opinion, Scott, maybe one more. You know, we've got three really under 1217. We've really got three different issues that we can actually talk about, and from for rezoning this. And I'm going to read that. It's public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practice. Those are really the pieces of the first part of the ordinance that are our purpose, essentially. And I'm not trying to step on anything Brian might say, but in any of those things, do you think this zoning qualifies for any of those overall scopes that the council can look at for rezoning?
I guess I'm confused on the question.
So in 1217.01, the first part of the paragraph, it says basically it can be considered for, I'll read it again to you. Convenience, let me read it here. Necessity, public necessity, convenience, general welfare, or good zoning practices. That's what we're amending zoning for. And I guess I'm trying to figure out if this, my question is just that. Does this fit under any of those items for scope?
I think that's more open to interpretation. Everybody could have, so from a legal standpoint, I would defer to Mr. Zett because I don't know, from qualification or purpose that I would defer to Mr. Zett.
Well, I guess one thing I'd point out, you're not rezoning anything with this piece of legislation. This is sort of, think of it as council's application that will then go to planning and zoning for them to, that discussion, you have to wait until that really gets back to you as council on the actual rezoning. This is you just saying, we'd like this to be rezoned. Planning commission could make a decision either way, whether they think it should be or shouldn't be. And then that decision will ultimately come back to you as the final judge of.
Okay. I misread this then. I read this as this was a decision we were making.
No.
It says in here the ordinance requesting an amendment change to zoning classification. So I'm just reading it. I read it as we were making an amendment or a change. Now, obviously, sending it back to planning and zoning, that's a different operation in I guess what I thought we were doing today.
Yeah,
or at least looking at.
If you look down through the rest of the application, That's all it is, it's just requesting, and then it will go back to planning, and then ultimately, so then there's many steps in the process along the way. It's not an ordinance to rezone, it's an ordinance requesting a change, and that change would be like you had seen in the code allows, an applicant to
Right.
make that, and this is just, actually, the code says a council member can make that, but then when you read down further, it seems a little more like an ordinance that can come from council requesting a rezoning and that be pushed through the process, as opposed to just an individual council member.
And then, Scott, I've got a question for Scott. Scott, there's still 2 items that are sitting in front of other commissions, correct? There's a permit in front of the planning and zoning that's been tabled, correct?
There's a transportation corridor overlay district request that's tabled in front of planning commission pending a submittal of a traffic study. And there's also the variance request that is tabled in front of the Board of Zoning Appeals.
And what happens if either one of those are turned down? I mean, what exactly what's the outcome if either one of those, or one or the other or both, are denied? What would happen? Would the zoning stay the same?
The zoning would stay the same.
And but they just wouldn't be able to do apartments at that point?
They wouldn't be able to do the apartment project as proposed per the plan.
Okay.
They could always come back and revise their plan to show something different and then proceed through the process, but any denial, for example, from the Transportation Corridor Overlay District just means that that plan they submitted was denied.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
Scott, I think, obviously there's I don't know that this is the time exactly for the owner or whoever to come speak on behalf of this. It might be at the commission, if we can sit back to there. Just to clarify, whether they vote yes or no, it comes back to us, correct?
Yes.
For the rezoning?
No matter what they vote, it comes back to us.
For the
If
rezoning?
we pass this and it goes back to commission, is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Yeah, if
Yes or no, it comes back to us?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Obviously, the property owner knows that this isn't favorable, I guess, from the residents to whoever. Is there any room for compromise? Have you talked with them? Like, would they be willing to go back to the drawing board and say, I get it, I hear you, maybe this isn't the right spot for this? Have you talked through that with them? Are they willing to look at a different concept that is more in line with the neighborhood or whatever?
There's always room for compromise.
Has
However,
it been discussed with them?
they're fully aware of the concerns of the community.
Yeah. I mean, they've been in the meetings.
What they propose. So if they choose to proceed with as they propose, the apartment development as proposed, they may do that. We can offer to compromise with them, but they have every right to proceed forward. So
I understand
yeah,
that.
they have not. We've indicated some staff concerns regarding parking or the location of the dumpster, the ability for a trash truck to get in there, but they have not, to us, indicated, okay, we're hearing a lot of concerns, let's reconfigure this.
Hey, Joseph?
I was just gonna say, the intention of the applicant is to move forward with the project as proposed.
Yeah, and I guess, when it comes back to, it'll eventually come back to us if we move forward with this, but I'd like to ask Mr. Zetz, this is gray area, but let's just call it what it is. This is gray area for us. This is something that we don't see often. I've never seen it. I don't know if we've seen it at all. Any of you with more experience on council. So obviously there's some risk both ways. How do you see this? As far as
It's a unique way to initiate a rezoning, but it's not unheard of. I know another client who did this a while ago, and I actually talked to another zoning attorney in my office, and he knew of a political subdivision that had done the same thing.
does this put the city at any risk?
The city's always at risk.
Well, I
You just can't
understand.
make a decision without being at risk.
I understand, but because we're in a gray area that we haven't seen before, does it put us in any risk legally?
I think no bigger risk than
They-
every other decision you make.
Yeah, and I just leave it by saying this, I think it's fair that we have people here tonight, whether the council chooses to let people know where they stand or not, that's individually up to them, but the way I see this is, it's tough because I don't wanna take anybody's property and just change it. I don't really believe in that philosophically, but also look at this and I drive by that and I have friends in Beechwood Trail and I go, where are you putting that? Like, you know, it just isn't a good place for it. It doesn't seem to fit there, and I would hope that the developer would be willing to compromise and here are friends from Harrison Township, here are friends at the schools, and realize that it's not a good development for there. And I do realize that, I fully realize it, that it's their right to do it, and I struggle with that because I don't like the concept of changing people's zoning just like that. But I would hope that message would get back to them and you could deliver that, Scott, and maybe that there's a compromise to be had.
We can definitely speak with the applicant, however, I know the applicant is fully aware of the concerns of the surrounding community. They're fully aware.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Yep. Any other discussion? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I agree with Mr. Lee on just the merits of the rezoning, but I do have a question. The TCOD application, that's tabled right now, correct?
That's correct.
And that's in front of Planning and Zoning or?
Planning and Zoning Commission.
So, just kind of, I don't know, just trying to play every scenario here. What happens if Planning and Zoning would pull that off the table, approve the TCOD, and then we still decide to apply or whatever we're doing to apply for rezoning, and it goes through the rezoning process where where Planning and Zoning either approves it or denies it, and it comes back to us, and let's say we approve a rezoning, even though the TCOD has already been approved. What does that do to the project?
I don't know.
Okay.
I think as we've all talked about, it's a unique situation that I'd probably have to confer with Mr. Zetz to say, now what?
Okay.
Scott, do you have a feeling from your interaction with that board as to, is it tabled waiting for us to do something here? Is it what drove that table? I mean, you saw us table something tonight because we felt that, you know, it made sense to wait on something.
Mm-hmm.
What drove that?
The Planning and Zoning Commission requested that the applicant do the traffic study. So they're currently conducting the traffic study, and once that's complete and they can get it to us by the application deadline, then it'll move forward to Planning and Zoning Commission. So that's what they're waiting on before taking action.
Okay. I'm having a heck of a time wrapping my brain around it. And I'm somebody that is, I'm almost always bigger, but let's stop shoehorning people in this city. And I'm still having a heck of a time with the same thing that Mr. Lee talked about. I am. It's taking a piece of property and rezoning it, essentially out from underneath somebody is gonna take I'm glad this is not an immediate resolution. Those of you that don't know me and council does, some of the people in the audience don't. I tend to overthink this stuff and I jump into it as much as I possibly can to try to get to where I am at the end. So I'm glad it's not an immediate decision because I'm certainly gonna have to do a lot of soul searching before I get to the point where.
Yes. Scott, one other quick thing, and I don't know if the existing condo association will be willing to share this or not, but I'm aware that typically condo associations will allow rentals to happen within their association. Now, some will specifically say they don't. Is there any way we can find that out? Whether they're purposely denied renting property, or what the conditions might be for that? I think that would be also something I'd be interested in knowing.
I could look in their condo association documents. I imagine those are available via the recorder's website. If not, I could possibly get in touch with their condo association president and see if they have those.
I personally would like to know that.
Mel, okay. I have two more things. We talked about the traffic study. Alan, I know you mentioned maybe it was I don't believe it was before council, but maybe the commission, that you didn't think that would make I don't want to speak for you, so, that would make a huge impact on the decision, or you didn't think it would change things a lot?
That is correct.
With that being said, our schools have made it perfectly clear that they're not taking a bus back there. And I mean, I don't live over there, but like I said, I travel there. The impact that would alone make, let alone adding 42 apartment units, just to traffic and rush hour. Did they factor that into that? I mean, will they, I mean, I know you said it won't make a difference, but at some point, will they look at that?
So,
Or do they talk to the schools and ask them, hey, will you consider this?
that's not something that's typically looked at in the traffic study. What is looked at is the access to the development itself and the impact to the adjacent intersections with an impact study. So at the access point itself, it's gonna look at whether there's a right turn lane or a left turn lane needed. The developer has already said that they would put a right turn lane in as something is required per the TCOD. We thought that was the most appropriate. A left turn lane is very unlikely to be warranted from the traffic studies that I've seen. It's possible, but very unlikely. The impacts would look at Watkins and Broad and the next road to the north. I don't remember what that is off the top of my head. However, we don't have the impact fees or anything in place right now. So while it would show that there's going to be impact there, that doesn't change anything. The study's not gonna tell us something we don't already know, and it's not gonna get us anything out of it. So that's why I don't think the traffic study's gonna make that much of a difference.
Okay. One last thing. I'm gonna take it a step further than Tim, because I think that it's only fair, and we've had developers come in here and ask us, just tell us what you want, or wish we'd have known this and we may have gone a different direction. And if this doesn't have to go back to planning commission, I think that it's fair for them to know. As much as I don't like compromising the fact that I don't wanna take someone's property or spot rezone, however you wanna look at it. I feel this, and I'm looking at you, Scott, just cause I want this message to get back to them, from one council member, that as much as I don't like the concept of what we're talking about doing, I do think this is a poor enough design, and it will hurt that area. This would be a situation where I would go against that, and I would be in favor of changing the zoning for that specific parcel, just because I just don't think it's good. I don't think it's good for anybody up there. I don't think it's good for the city, the schools, our friends in Harrison, anyone. The only one that's good for it, I can see, is for the developer.
That's right.
And so I'd like that message to get back, because I'd like to see a compromise in something other than what they're proposing. I'll leave it at that.
Hey, Tommy, just a quick question. The information that you had got from the school, not taking a school bus back there, is that any school bus? So let me just, if this was redeveloped as 2 lots or
Now,
whatever.
that came out of the planning and zoning commission meeting. Mr. Janelle stated that.
So is that any school bus? I mean, if it was, I'm just throwing out the idea of if it were 2 single lots back there and they were going back to
We're
get
talking
a
about
kid.
the apartments
Right.
where they have to, and I
I'm
wasn't
just
at that
asking,
meeting.
I don't know, I'm just asking for clarification on it.
They would have to bring, because, well, I wasn't there, so go.
The superintendent mentioned, and this was specifically focusing on those being apartments. They said they would not take a bus into the complex. They said that they would have to do the pickup more than likely on Watkins Road. However, they it was open-ended because they didn't know enrollment. Is there 1 student back there, 10? They didn't know that there would be there's some unanswered questions in terms
Right.
of how they would reassess bus routes to do a stop, because they don't know the school
So
age population.
this seems a little out of place for the school to tell us that they're, well, and I'm just gonna use it as a threat. It sounds to me like they were threatening, if you put apartments back there, we're gonna make a bus stop on the busy road. That seems way out of bounds in my book. If they're gonna go back there for 1 kid, they're not gonna go back there for 5.
It's not a true statement.
So that's what I'm, so what I'm asking is, if they're not gonna bring any bus back there, it doesn't matter if there's 1 kid or 10, then everybody, it's gonna stop out on the busy road. Is that,
That's right.
that's what I'm trying to understand. So
They're
Tommy, I'm
indicating-
just trying to.
I don't wanna
I'm just trying
speak
to
for
make a
them,
point.
I wasn't there, but that's what I was told to say, that they made that clear. If that's not the case, then I'll retract it, I believe that's what they said.
Well, what I'm saying is if they go to a lesser density and there's 2 lots back there and there's 1 kid, they're still gonna stop on the busy road for the 1 kid to come in.
No, I get it, I think what they were referring to was it may have even been the original, may have been Mr. Barso's application at zoning commission, I believe they spoke on behalf of that. Am I
They did.
correct?
They did.
And I believe that either one of the school board members or Mr. Janelle made that comment.
Mr. Janelle indicated you're specifically looking at the apartments, like if this were a
Specifically
single-family
apartments.
home, that was never discussed, but they said they would do a pickup on Watkins Road, but not knowing enrollment numbers for that development, they couldn't say if they would have to do that.
Since this is the first reading, you're gonna have, not only a chance to talk tonight under citizens' comments, so just hang on for just a couple minutes, it's just the first reading. Any other discussion?
I'm done.
All right, Mr. Barstow, you wanna join us, please? Ordinance 2019-4338 for a first reading.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Powell,
Second.
seconded by Mrs. Carter. Kathy, when you're ready, first reading.
Ordinance 2019-4338. This is the first reading, an ordinance to amend ordinance 2014-4202, the mayor's court cost fee schedule of the city of Pataskala.
Okay, any discussion, since we have Kip here, any questions? Yes, sir.
Yeah, I do have some questions. My first, will Magistrate Kelsey get up here to? How are you?
How are you?
Oh, I'm fine, Your Honor, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Good. So my first question is, the red line ones on this Exhibit A, those are the changes? The ones that are in red?
Unfortunately, mine doesn't have any color but black and white, but you have one specifically that I can address?
Well, the one that I really had a problem with was the diversion fee of $200. So diversion, just for my fellow council members, diversion is someone, instead of being prosecuted, they're diverted to a probation-like program. They may have to pay restitution. It could be somebody who, stole a lipstick from Kroger or something. It should be something nonviolent, no sex, nothing like that. It's low-level things. But frequently, these are economic crimes. And so to me, charging somebody $200 to get into a diversion program could be a disincentive if, and then where am I gonna come up with the restitution if I have to pay $200 to get in? And I would encourage you to look at Chief Justice O'Connor's study on the Supreme Court website about issues such as paying for justice and things like that. I think it's just manifestly unfair to ask somebody to pay $200 in this situation. So I would not be in favor of that change in any way, shape, or form. The other ones, people who don't show up to court and they have to pay court costs, they don't show up, hey, that's on them. I have no problem with that. But that just stuck out at me. Thanks.
Mr. Barstow, the question is appropriate, and I am familiar with the Supreme Court bench card, as we call it, where it outlines indigency and ability to pay and those kind of issues. But let me draw your attention in a different direction. The diversion program was set up with the concept that there are certain crimes or certain issues that should be diverted from the criminal justice system. Point in fact, some young kid has a little bit of marijuana. He's caught and it's a drug abuse offense, and if he's convicted, then that offense then stays with him, and that will keep him out of the military, most jobs, any kind of bonding jobs. So it made a lot of sense to me in most jurisdictions to have the ability to take this person out of the criminal justice system and divert him. And if he successfully completes the diversion, then the case is dismissed and it's not then tagged on him, as you know, more than anybody, dealing with this day in and day out as you do. Now, as to the fee that applies to that, if he was to go through non-diversion and he's convicted of whatever it is, there would be court costs, and then add-ons to that, and my fine. And that typically would add up, if you put the numbers together, to around $200. So the advantage of the $200 is simply allow him to get diverted, pay some penalty, but not have to be convicted for purposes of the stigma of being convicted of a drug offense or whatever it may be. So it's really a benefit. Now, as to the ability to pay that, we have a program where we give them time. Does that help
No.
alleviate your concerns?
No, it doesn't. And I'm not talking about the Chief Justice's bench card. I'm talking about the national programs that the Chief Justice is involved in, which talk about the cost, the quote unquote, the cost of criminal justice system when you look at folks who are even of modest income, lower income people who are indigent. So that's what I'm saying. I mean, what this essentially does is says, oh, okay, well, you're going to pay $200. I just to not be convicted. So I don't see the incentive. I just don't. I'm not aware of any court, maybe I'm just not aware, that charges a specific fee for someone to go into a diversion program. I mean, because the goal is usually these are economic. You cited a drug offense, but my typical experience is these are economic offenses, shoplifting, stealing, taking money from your employer, things like that. So the incentive, you want to have the victim made whole, and so you try to avoid any sort of financial sanction, so that any money that the defendant has can go towards restitution, and then the court costs that are.
No, I appreciate what you're saying, Mr. Barstow, but what would you suggest? If someone comes in, they commit a crime.
No, well.
Should there be any or no penalty attached to that activity?
If they're in diversion programs, sir, they haven't committed a crime because they don't get convicted.
But they're not in the diversion program, sir, until they pay the fee to get in. And I think that's where you're having the problem, if I understand.
Yeah, it's someone with financial means can afford this program. Someone without financial means say, I don't have the $200. I'll just take the hit, and then I can ask for, maybe down the road, I'll ask for an expungement. So, which is I think is only $50. So I just.
That's why we offer them time to get that money together, because I do appreciate, in fact, I think we try very hard to level the playing field between the haves and the have-nots in the mayor's court. And I say that because many times I will reduce or not even fine somebody. We have a program where if they are fined, we put them on a payment plan. We continue that payment plan out to accord their ability to pay. If they can pay $5 a week, that's what they pay. If they can pay more, they do so. And when we do that, we allow them 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. We've had people for a year because of their financial means to come in and try to pay the obligation. So we do take great pains to try to work with those people that are not financially well off.
If they pay you currently $20 and now $25. So to me, quite frankly, that is like the check cashing industry, okay? We're gonna take advantage of you. We're gonna give you time to pay, but only if you pay us more money. I just don't.
Marcio, I'm sorry, I respectfully disagree with you, sir.
Okay, well, we're just gonna disagree on it, because that's.
I feel that anybody that commits a crime, whether it's theft or speeding, should just say, sorry, we inconvenienced you to come to court. Have a nice day. I just don't believe that.
I didn't
Now,
say
maybe-
that.
I know, and I'm taking it a little bit further than maybe I should, and I don't mean any disrespect by it. But by the same token, I don't understand your position where someone comes in, we allow them to divert and try to get them unconvicted by paying the $200. And by the way, the $200 for the criminal offenses has been in effect for 5, 6, 7 years. We just added 2 more things, and that was one of the things that you actually created, and I thank you for it, and that was the traffic diversion. You were instrumental in getting that applied.
Well,
And now we're adding it to driving under suspension cases.
Right.
For example, someone comes in and they have a driving under suspension because of failure to reinstate, and you know this better than anybody. They've actually gone through their whole suspension period, but because they did not know they had to go to the Bureau of Motor Vehicles and pay, and I don't mean to get angry, but sometimes the Bureau of Motor Vehicles angers me.
Oh, you're preaching to the choir.
Because they didn't know to pay the Bureau of Motor Vehicles their $25 or $35 reinstatement fee. They don't know they had to do that, so they're thinking their period of suspension is over, and they can go out and drive. Well, guess what? They get caught again.
Right.
Now, that's wrong.
Right.
That's wrong. So now we've added those kind of cases to the diversion program.
I guess
So we try, sir.
I know. I guess what I'm saying is that the vast majority of people who, and the BMV is the king of punishing working class people in a society, in an area of the state that doesn't have good public transportation. They're the king of punishing working class people for nonviolent, just not getting their license. And I can't tell you the number of police officers that I've talked to who sympathize with that issue. They see this all the time too. People who they didn't go and pay some $25 fee to the BMV, and now they have their car impounded and all sorts of ridiculous things that come up. So I just see this as not certainly on the scale that the BMV does it, because they are the champion of that. But I want to belabor the point. I just see this as kind of a cousin of that. So I would encourage them not to have those kinds of fees, and not to people who can't pay because of their economic situation, not make it worse by, increasing the fee in a time payment program. That's just my 2 cents. Thanks.
No, I appreciate your thoughts on that.
Any other discussion?
I just want to say that I really enjoyed this back and forth.
I don't
It's nice to see 2 people who are well educated in their field discussing.
Well, thank you. I don't
I
think
have nothing to add to this. I'm sorry.
I don't get to yell at judges very often, so it doesn't.
Mr. Barstow's been around a long time, and I have a lot of respect for him, so it's a little bit of banter, but no ill will.
No, absolutely not. No.
Thanks for coming tonight.
Thank you.
And thank
Thanks
you
for all of
for also the Surrender Day program, initiating that. I thought that was a great idea. And
It's a great idea, it didn't go well.
well, you know what? First time. So
Can I just comment on it? Sure. I thought actually that was an excellent idea. The chief, that was a great idea to come up with that and to do that administration. I will say this, I did see a lot of things on Facebook, and this is a little soapboxy, but there are a lot of departments in the country who use that as a trap. It's fake. No, they do. They have a fake surrender day, and they're sitting there waiting for you. When you come in they call it safe surrender.
2 tickets to the Super Bowl, yeah.
Yeah, and you get in there and they're slapping the cuffs on you. So there were a lot of people. That was not this, but there were a lot of people who thought that it was fake. I saw a lot of things on Facebook and people asking, "Is this
Legit,
real?
yep.
Is this legit?"
Yep.
So we need to get the word out. Absolutely, this is legit. And I encourage the police department to keep saying, "Hey, this is legit. We'd rather have you come to us and do it safely than us have to go out and find you or chase you around and get something cleared up."
So we had 4 people show up, but of the 4 people, 2 of them had their cases dismissed. One person had his license reinstated that day, and the other person came in and we severely reduced his fine, and we got him the ability to take his test, because he had to retest to get his license, and they were all happy campers.
Absolutely. We should tout those. The reason why we can't put those out on our Facebook page, these are the results. These are real results from real folks who came in, took responsibility for what had happened, and they got things taken care of. They're back on the road legally and safely. So Thanks.
We can't take
Thank
credit
you.
for that, it was all Magistrate Kelsey's
Well,
idea.
no, but I appreciate the police
Well,
department.
everybody helped.
Well, everybody helped getting those folks in. Yeah, they had one in Franklin County at the courthouse. It was huge. The B&B, there's the B&B,
It was 3 days, yeah.
3 days, yeah, of grace, whatever they're called. So, great, thanks. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other discussion on the resolutions? Resolution 2019-025, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Ventura Brothers Services LLC for the Mill Street Water Line Project.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Hicken,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-029, a resolution approving a then and now certification by the city finance director pursuant to RC 5705.41 D2 for the payment of operating expenditures.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow,
Second.
seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Carter,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-031, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to advertise, receive, and review bids for the Liberty Park Nature Works Grant Funded Improvements Project.
So moved.
Moved by Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Walther,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 2019-033, a resolution authorizing and directing the city administrator to execute a contract with Spenco Excavating, Inc. to replace 7 culverts on Headley's Mill Road.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Barstow and seconded by Mr. Powell. Discussion and roll.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walther,
Yes.
All right, very good. Resolution passes. Any motions tonight? Okay, additional citizens' comments. Anybody wish to speak? You have 3 minutes, and I'll need your name and address and, ma'am,
Go ahead.
and it has to be on any topic that we've discussed here this evening. Name and address, please.
Connie Klima, PO Box 991, Pataskala. I am here representing the owner of the property that was the subject tonight, which is why I was raising my hand. I know I only have 3 minutes, but I want to go through several things. I'm not here to represent what will or won't be developed there or what's even being proposed on this property on Watkins Road, but I am here to speak about the fact that you have an ordinance before you to actually initiate a rezoning. And I want to throw out some information, really legally, and as a caution for a body to come together and basically be organized to rezone property, not because of the zoning, but what is being proposed to be built and is permitted in the zoning. The people here tonight, I have all respect for them and what they want to do. It is their right to do that. They live in places that are zoned and they're allowed to be there. Few of these people here would respect you tonight if you would decide to also rezone their properties because of some reason that other neighbors associated next to them, perhaps the general business people that own property adjacent to them, came and said we need more business use in this area of town, on the west side of town, or the east side of town, I'm sorry. And we would really prefer that more businesses be developed, and we would like to stop the development of single-family houses. Or, for instance, an agricultural use, which is adjacent to Broad Street. All of a sudden, people that live in the developments do not like the chemicals, do not like the dirt after plowing, and all of a sudden they're saying, you know, we really would like more houses like we live in. They'll be coming more. What type of a precedent are you going to set? If you start saying, let's stop the right of a person to do in their permitted zoning, and let's start basically down zoning. Let me go through what any person that does a zoning in this city has to look at. You always ask what the future land use plan looks like. The current future land use plan, which is aging, and I know a new draft is there, says that this particular area should be high density. The people that are living in this subdivision adjacent to this across the road live in an R7, high density, 7,000 square foot lots are permitted there. Adjacent to this property is general business property. Adjacent to this property is RM property, where the condominium association is built and has 5 units per acre. So what you're at, the zoning, or what this ordinance, or what you're saying that you're going to ask the planning zoning, or you're considering to ask them to do, is to rezone this property to an R87. When next door, we have one house for 7,000 square foot lots in their subdivision. You have a GB district, which is all types of commercial uses, and you have an RM, which is adjacent to them, which permits 10 units per acre, but you're asking for an R87, which permits one house per 87,100 square feet. That is, in your typical zoning, a spot zoning. It is also a taking of somebody's existing right to do on their property what they have a right to do. That opposition to what is being proposed in that zoning should take place at the planning commission, not by council saying let's rezone it because we want to stop an apartment complex. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Mayor, am I allowed to ask Ms. Clem a question?
Yeah,
No.
you know what, this is first ordinance, for first reading, let's go ahead and.
I
discuss it.
think it's fair to ask you, since you're representing the company or the developer, is there a compromise to be had?
That compromise, I think, Tom, should be taking place at the planning commission. The planning commission will be overseeing, we're not asking a rezoning. We have a current RM zoning, and the plan has gone there. These people have shown up and they've talked, the planning commission's listened to that. But to rezone property, I have to say, the owner had no idea that the initial rezoning had even been made. Neither did my client, who has spent money, who has initialized the TIS, which is an expensive thing, is trying to go through the development process. All of those things are going forward, and to basically have a council decide because some neighbors are against what could go in there, to me is crossing a line and also setting a terrible precedent. I understand you don't like the density and you don't like the apartments, and I don't want to talk about that. I'm not here to represent that. I'm here to oppose, actually in protection of everyone's constitutional rights, to have the rights they have under their zoning. We spoke at the planning commission, and I said this. One gentleman spoke of the lady that actually has the dog pound there, or the place. I've kept my cat there and my dog there. Now, what happens if all of a sudden the neighbors decide, or new neighbors decide, that they don't like the barking of the dogs? And they come and protest to you and say, will you please adopt an ordinance to rezone the person who has a dog pound there because they're making noises all night and I don't like it?
It's a kennel.
So, it's a kennel, I'm sorry, I couldn't think of the word, I apologize. But it's a nice kennel, I like the lady. I think it's all wonderful, but I don't believe that people's rights should be taken this way, and I think it is a taking.
Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir. Name and address again, please, sir.
Drew Clark, 174 Winter Grove, technically Harrison Township. First of all, I appreciate the careful restraint and thought you're taking to this matter. I think by having issues tabled at Board of Appeals, issues tabled at Planning and Zoning, the traffic study was requested by many residents at Planning and Zoning. The compromises have been discussed at Planning and Zoning. As a matter of fact, we had double, maybe triple attendance of residents there to express the concern. I also would encourage you to think about spirit versus letter. We don't know the full extent of when this was annexed, but this was Harrison Township land at one time. And it was annexed into the city, my understanding, and zoned this way so that those condos could come out in a planned development. And so, as far as taking someone's land, again, I appreciate the restraint in doing so, but I would also argue that I think the reason that would be in your code would be for extreme situations when something just does not make sense and you're the stewards of the city, the stewards of the quality of life in the city, and I think it is appropriate that you have a tool to address something that is egregious to all those around. A couple other arguments just in response to what we just heard. Apartments are not single-family homes. I understand the lot size of Barrington Ridge is much smaller than Beechwood Trails and is in the city, but apartments bring on a whole new slew of issues that single-family homes do not. And I know Nancy addressed a lot of those earlier. I would also want to clarify one thing, if I may, with the buses. While I live here, I do work at the Ohio School Boards Association. we have on staff a gentleman named Pete Japisky, who is widely considered the kind of top expert in public transportation in the state, and I'd be glad to put you in touch with him as well as far as questions on the school busing. Our recommendation to all districts is actually never to pull into private property because there is no enforcement. You've got lights flashing, you've got people trying to get to work in a tight scenario and they fly around a bus, you're on private property. And that makes a whole mess of enforcing the laws that go along with those school buses. And so as far as holding them hostage or anything like that, it really is standard practice to stay on the road, stay on public property. And in addition to what Superintendent Janelle said, they also have a policy of not backing up just for the safety of the kids. So I think either way you are going to have an issue of the busing affecting traffic on the road due to those recommendations and just general safety. So I appreciate the time to address you all on the situation, and thank you for the work you do.
Thank you. Next.
Gary Sunderman, 652 Monticello Court, Pataskala. With regard to the remarks of Ms. Klima, I agree that our property rights are a valued benefit that we have in this country, and I wouldn't want to see that harmed. And I don't think it would have gotten to this point had there been a little more consideration given by the developer for the community that he is desiring to build in. This ordinance that has been proposed, I believe, is providing more input from the residents, more consideration by the city fathers and planners. It's also formulating some documentation that can be referred to later. I don't think now this is my opinion, but I believe I could speak for many of the local residents. I don't think anyone is against development of that property. But, and I suggested this to Mid-Ohio in a letter, that it would not accommodate the kind of condos that are at Jefferson Meadow now. They're 4-unit structures which just wouldn't fit. But it would accommodate very nicely, I think, 2-unit condos such as the ones at the villas in back of Kroger's. In their perimeter lots, they're 2-unit. And I even made a copy of, off the county map and placed in condos based on the measurements that I got off the villas. And I sent this to Mid-Ohio, and just as a suggestion that it might be something that they would want to consider, that would be more in line with the existing structures in the area. So I got a nice reply and said, thank you for your comments and illustrations. We will certainly share this with the applicant, which is the developer that's requesting to build all these apartments. So I don't think anybody's against more condo type community buildings or houses. And I think this rezoning request would be an attempt to establish good zoning practices.
30 seconds, sir.
Thank you.
Yes.
My name is Robert Sexton, 5447 Watkins Road, Pataskala. I just had four comments. I think number one, Councilman Lee read off the reasons why you can take up this type of discussion. Public necessity, good zoning practices. I just feel like that comes right down the center of this entire issue. I actually drove between Broad Street and Hollow Road. Those are the two intersections that this property is bracketed by. It's 1.7 miles. There's more than 60 homes in there, and they're all good-sized lots, every one of them. Now, I realize Barrington Ridge is a development, but Barrington Ridge is not a Watkins Road property. It's a development that goes off of Watkins. So you drive down this street that I live on, there's nothing that even closely resembles an apartment complex with 42 units. And so when you ask the question, do we have good zoning practices in place, I think it opens up the door for the discussion that you may want to entertain as this goes forward in what I would call to be a unique situation. I think our people, if you've heard from the two different zoning bodies that have dealt with this, we've had record turnout. We jam-packed this place, and that's not because we're all organized political campaign operatives. It's not just the adjacent neighbors. The entire area surrounding Beechwood Trails, Barrington Ridge, the condos behind it, everybody's up in arms about it because of what they think it'll bring to the neighborhood. So most of us didn't understand city council would be going down this same road until just a couple days ago. But I think now the word's going to get out. If you have a second hearing on this, I think you'll see a lot of public input coming from them. They're going to want to have their say for you too and make their case as to why this is important.
1 minute, sir.
Thank you. And my last comment is about the traffic study. I'm not an expert on traffic studies, but I've seen them done in other neighborhoods, and I literally live right by where this is going to happen. If it goes in, usually there's some sort of device that goes across the street that counts traffic. We haven't had that, so I don't know who's I don't know what kind of studies possibly even being done to even know what kind of traffic is going on there. There's no device counting anything at this moment in time, and so I'm not sure where we are in that process. But I do know this: if you stop a bus on Watkins Road, right there by the Broad Street intersection in the middle of rush hour, you're going to jam the place up a lot. And if you have people going around buses on their way because they don't understand whether they can go around a turn lane or not, I think that presents a safety issue. I think that's where Mr. Janelle's concerns are. And when you factor that in with the other issues we're dealing with, again, I take you back to what are your reasons why you can take this up? And I think general welfare falls in there at that point. So I would submit to the council that you do have decent reasons to have this discussion, despite the fact that it is a unique situation.
Thanks, sir. Thank you. Anybody else wish to speak? Yes, sir.
Yes, my name is Rick Owens. I live at 399 Middle Ground Road.
Okay.
In regard to the traffic, as these folks have brought up, the traffic is a definite concern. You're putting in a complex that has one entrance and one exit, which is totally unacceptable. You're going to bring all that traffic from those 44 units out onto Watkins Road. You're going to do it during rush hour. You're going to have your school buses, which puts a big impact on it, coming up through there, and any children, you don't know how many children are going to be in those 44 units. There could be quite a significant number of children coming out there that have to get on and off of those buses morning and evening. You're going to choke that road up pretty good. If during that time too, you have a medical emergency, let's say, someone in the apartments or someone in one of the houses, now everybody does the best they can do to get out of the way of the squad, but it's going to hold them up. Medical emergencies are very time sensitive, so that needs to be considered also. To answer your question on the bus turning around, there is not enough room to turn a bus around in that complex. That was not provided whatsoever, and the policy being not to be able to back up a bus for safety reasons. So that takes that out of there. Also, there is contemplation of expanding and putting a development in at the end of Middle Ground Road. That's going to add a considerable amount of traffic coming down Middle Ground to Watkins, citation to Watkins, and that has to be put in your figures also. So that's, my concern is I don't particularly want to see an apartment complex. I do take care of my property and so the people around me. But to have an apartment complex, as I say, with one entrance and exit, is very short-sighted, I believe, on the building. And if you were to have a second exit, it would need to go down onto Broad Street, as Mr. Van Buren from Harrison County, trustee, he brought that up at one of the other meetings. He said a connector road could be put down to Broad Street, which would alleviate the problem of one exit and entry. So,
Thank you, sir.
that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Next.
Eric Fawner, 667 Forward Pass, Pasco, Ohio, also Harrison Township. I just wanted to bring up one point that I think Alan talked about, is that the study wouldn't have an impact, it wouldn't change. And if I remember from the last couple meetings where there was multiple people here, I believe that the city doesn't have any money to cover if there is an impact. There's not anything in the legislation that sets back and says, okay, Mr. Developer, you need to help fix the problem if you want to build here. Is that a correct statement?
That is correct.
Okay, so because we know we have a problem, I feel like we're all looking past it with blinders on, saying, let's look past it and hope that it never becomes a problem. But those two properties out front are zoned either general business. I think the church owned that one property at one point. Not sure what it zoned at this point, but those are gonna build up at some point. Coglin's gonna build up on the other side. That Realty's gonna do something over there. That intersection is gonna become a major intersection at some point in our life cycle. And I think we need to start thinking about that today, because that's what we wanna do here as you guys. That's your job, is to think about the future, not what's 2 feet in front of us. We gotta look at the global picture. And that's what I'm asking you guys to do. Okay?
Yep.
Thank you.
Anybody else wish to speak?
Tim Barrett, 575 Richmond Drive, Pasco, Ohio. Let me speak, you can check this out. Dan Graves, president of the Homeowners Association, GRAY. When we first moved in, I think about 15% of the properties were available, could be rented, could be leased. And that was changed now, there's 0. There are none for rent. I do hope the traffic study is done yet while school is still in session. That will show much more accurate. And the things that have been said, regarding the whole traffic thing. Let's go back to 2001, 2002 when the zoning was changed. And maybe finding those notes, what actually was said. I seriously doubt that the notion of apartments were brought up. Had it been, I don't think that would have been approved. Mid-Ohio had decided to build condos there. All of a sudden they changed their plan. And then they want to make money off of this parcel that really is not a whole lot of use to them by selling it to Mr. Heitmeyer, who will in turn make lots of money and continue to make money. That's business, I understand that. Some business deals, very profitable, some don't go well. And that's the risk they take. Ultimately, whether planning and zoning approves this and it comes back to you, it's going to come back to you. And I agree with the gentleman who just spoke. You've got to look at the big picture. Is it right for that area, for that part of the community? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I'd hate to see you approve that, not just from my somewhat selfish perspective, because I'm going to look out and see apartments out my windows when I come out of my garage. But if something approved, you look back and say, wow, what a mess. We shouldn't have done that, and we're not going to do that anymore. So I hope it doesn't go through. Thanks.
Thank you.
And thanks for all your good work. Okay, I don't envy any of you. I told my wife when I do school board meetings, which I've worked with schools and been head of school, and so thanks for your good work.
Anybody else wish to speak?
246 Citation Drive. And I realize I'm not from Pataska, but I'd be driving past where this would be every time. And I really am not gonna address school buses, you know, the apartments, where it's gonna be located and all that. First of all, I believe property rights you should have, and I'm all with you, this is tough. I hate to take somebody's rights, because the only thing I would believe more in is free speech. But at the same time, I was part of the group that went against AK Steel when they wanted to move outside. Just because you can put something there and you're allowed to do it, doesn't mean you should do it.
Amen.
That's all I'm asking you to think about. Because like I said, this one's a tough one for you guys to wrap your head around. It is. I wouldn't want to have to do it, but like I said, at the end of the day, what is best for most of the people, not just one person. That's all I'm asking you to look at. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Last chance? All right. What do you got for me, Mr. Barstow?
Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G4 to prepare for negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation. Invited into the executive session, B.J. King, City Administrator, Brian Zetz, Law Director, Jamie Nicholson, Finance Director, Chief of Police Bruce Brooks, and Deputy Chief of Police Mike Bowles.
Got a motion and a second, discussion?
Who was the second?
I believe, Mr. Powell was second. Discussion and roll.
Barstow,
Yes.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
Yes.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell.
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
I paused there because there's a second executive session here. Are we gonna go into executive session, come out, and go back in?
Yeah, I was gonna have Mr. Barstow bring the other one up now, and then we would give, like we did the last time, when we had two different topics.
For not coming to.
It's all right.
That's what I get for not being in leadership.
Mr. Barstow?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Mr. Mayor, I move we go into executive session pursuant to Ohio Revised Code Section 121.22G3 for a conference with an attorney for the public body concerning disputes involving the public body that are the subject of pending court action. The purpose of this executive session is to discuss the Licking Heights Schools / Board of Zoning Appeals litigation. Invited into this executive session is B.J. King, City Administrator, and Brian Zetz, Law Director.
Second.
Got a motion and a second, discussion, and roll on the first one. Did we already do that one?
Yes.
Okay, roll on the second one, I'm sorry.
Hicken,
Yes.
Lee,
Yes.
Carter,
I'll be recusing myself from the second executive session because of my employment with Lincoln Heights Schools. So after the first executive session, I will excuse myself and come down and have Kathy mark the record that I am back.
Walter,
Yes.
Powell,
Yes.
Barstow,
Yes.
Okay, executive session at 9:19, you're all excused, thank you.
Out of curiosity, once we go into executive session, everybody says yes. The session ends. There's no other good way to get that broken out. I mean, I agree with you. You're in executive session.
Sitting quietly.
are they still in?
Yeah, they're still talking. Let her
Oh,
relax.
I will put it back on pause.
Get them in here. Let's go.
You want me to go yell at them?
Yeah,
Where are they?
you can,
Hey,
kick
we're
them
okay.
too.
Dude,
get in here.
Kick 'em.
Come turn on my mom voice, like,
Need a motion to come out of executive session?
so moved.
Moved by Mrs. Carter.
Second.
Seconded by everybody else. Mr. Walther will take him.
Yep.
Discussion and roll.
Hicken? Lee?
Yes.
Carter?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hicken?
Yes.
All right, out of executive session at 10:05. Going around the room here. Got anything, Mel? Anything, Tim?
No.
Mel?
Wait.
You know what, listen.
Wait a second.
What's the matter?
Is somebody gonna pick up the motion?
No, we just went through it.
Okay, what's happening when we were walking in? Okay.
The
You did the
motion to go come back?
Yeah, we're good. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, we already did it.
I'll do it.
Yeah.
I'll do it.
Okay.
Kathy, didn't we just do that?
The motion to come out of executive session, yes.
Yes.
If you're talking about something else, I'll
We're
take
talking
care
about
of
a
it.
different motion.
I'll take care of it.
Thank you.
We have nothing, Mr. Higgins.
All right, we're going around the room. Tim has nothing. Mel has
Except I wanna say thank you to Janice for the fine work that she
Okay.
does.
Okay, pass it along.
Mel?
I do have two quick things. The first one is that Garrett was in here and that was just really cool. I have a sister who's special needs and that was really cool to, see she does the Special Olympics all the time. And then I wanna quickly touch on something that I didn't say last time because I had to get my thoughts together. But when the developer's attorney last time stood up and insinuated that almost, it was very insulting that we were hypocrites because we had spoke out against that last development, but some of us lived in condominiums, almost as if we've been trying to hide that fact. And there's nothing further from the truth. The fact that it does bother me when people start talking about, people in apartments aren't automatically, less valuable than somebody in a single family home. But some of the comments that were made were offensive. And I think it was done without, with the intention of that. So I just wanted to say that, never has it been made a secret. And in fact, Mr. Barstow and I have talked often about associations and the differences and the things that we deal with versus other people. So I wanted to address that issue. And that is all I have.
Mike?
Nothing.
Mr. Barstow?
Yeah, I move that council direct the administration to take no further action on the adverse decision on the BZA appeal from the Licking County Common Police Court.
Got a motion from Mr. Barstow, seconded by Mr. Higgin. Discussion?
Please have a little bit of discussion.
As an attorney who practices appellate law extensively, appeals are rarely successful. I think that this is an issue that is well off our radar, and let Licking Heights move forward with their school.
Mr. Walther?
I would agree with all that, and I would also add that Licking Heights will be responsible to do what they presented to the BZA in the package that was presented, and that I hope that the administration works with them to make sure that that is implemented.
Okay, any other discussion?
Could I clarify, who was the second?
Me.
Mr. Higgins.
Mr. Higgin. Any other discussion? All right, Kathy, roll on the motion, please.
Lee?
Yes.
Carter?
I've recused myself.
Walther?
Yes?
Powell?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Okay, motion passes. Anything else tonight,
No.
Mr. Barstow? My best to your mom and
Thank you.
everything that transpires and something like that. And if you need anything, please holler.
Thank you, appreciate it.
I'm right down the road. I know we're all tired. I can save anything I've got for, what do you got, Mr. Walther, anything?
All I have to say is, although I was not here on Saturday for the Easter egg hunt, I heard that it was absolutely fantastic, and I thank the administration and Lanier for being a part of it.
Yeah, I'd have to backtrack and say thanks to the city and again, Lanier and everything, everybody.
All the volunteers, I heard there were 160 volunteers, I believe,
Oh, yeah, at least.
for that.
Yep.
Amazing.
Yep. Mr. Lee?
Just real quickly, condolences to Pete and Nick's family. Wonderful man, did a ton for this community. Will be sorely missed, and hopefully down the road we can maybe have this picture hanging back there or something. So, that being said, motion to adjourn.
Second. Motion to adjourn, seconded by Mr. Barstow. Discussion and roll.
Carter?
Yes.
Walter?
Yes.
Powell?
Yes.
Barstow?
Yes.
Hagan?
Yes.
Lee?
Yes.
All right, see you.
Meeting adjourned.
Yes.
He did, see you, Mike.
Are we still recording, Ken?
Yes.
Okay.